Well, hello and welcome to San Angelo Live. I am Manny Diaz. This is our second live production of the day, and we have some breaking news to kind of bring to you from Lubbock, Texas today regarding Tim Vasquez, former San Angelo Chief of Police. He is in the federal courthouse there in Lubbock, Texas, facing federal bribery charges. One count, receipt of bribery by an agent of an organization receiving federal funds, and then three counts of honest services mail fraud there in Lubbock. This is day 3 of this case. We have boots on the ground. Without further ado, let's get to Mr. Joe Hyde, our reporter on the scene in Lubbock, Texas. Joe, day 3, welcome in. Can you tell us what was going on today? We heard that Tim was actually took the stand today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Manny. Been here for 3 days. This trial started on Monday morning at 8:30 with a pre-trial, and then it's been nonstop all the way until about 5 o'clock every day. Today was probably the most explosive day of the testimony because former police chief Tim Vasquez made the election. He didn't have to, but he decided he was going to take the stand and testify in his own defense.
Now, the jury is still deliberating today. I guess deliberation is still ongoing.
That's correct. Vasquez took the stand this morning after the cross. They went for lunch, came back, had one more defense witness. He was a music industry guy named Travis McClarty. And then they had closing arguments. Probably the longest part of this afternoon was the judge reading the jury charge. It's been a really contentious item between the prosecution and the defense as to what they can put into the jury instructions. Those are the instructions the judge gives the jury as they go into deliberations. But they did that. Then they had closing arguments between the defense and the prosecution. And then about 3:40 this afternoon, the prosecution rests, the defense rests, and the jury took it. And the jury deliberated till about 5:05 this afternoon. And the judge said, hey, let's reconvene the jury tomorrow at 8:30. I don't know if they're going to come up with a verdict. I mean, they didn't come up with a fast verdict. So that's, if you're a Tim Vasquez fan, that's probably a good thing. And so I anticipate probably by noon, maybe early afternoon tomorrow, we'll probably have a verdict. It might be earlier. Yeah, he's facing 4 total charges. The one is, of course, bribery. They're saying that Daly and Wells, which is a radio company that sells the Harris radio system to public safety networks all across the nation. I mean, I think they have Harris radios and certainly in San Angelo, they have in Abilene and Lubbock, to give you an example. The competitor is Motorola. So like DPS, I've learned this in the trial, the DPS is on Motorola, and these local municipal police departments are on Harris, and there's some interoperability problems between the two. But there's also, you have to balance what the fire department needs with the police department. The fire department needs radios that can burn through walls, and the 800 megahertz of the Harris radios, I guess, are considered good. But so are the Motorola's. I mean, you have people talk about the Motorola's. But regardless, the city council voted in 2015 to spend $5.7 million upgrading this Harris radio system. And of course, we were the recipient of some of that when they encrypted all the radios. And that really hurt us with our crime and crash reporting, because we had to go buy a $3,000 radio, a Harris radio. We actually have one. San Angelo Live owns one, so that we could listen in on the Channel 1, the public safety net.
Matter of fact, that's a radio that we have.
Anyway, I'm going too far. Can you keep going?
Matter of fact, that's a radio that we have right here in the studio. Matt Trammell listening in while he's actually directing this live stream. But nonetheless,
you're breaking.
So nonetheless, there are 43 checks that were deposited to the account of Mr. Tim Vasquez.
Hold on one second, and let me switch to speaker just a second.
Okay. So as we get ready to kind of bring Joe Hyde back, Tim Vasquez facing 4 counts of 1 count of receipt of bribe by an agent of an organization receiving federal funds, counts 2 through 4 honest services mail fraud. 43 checks were deposited to the account of Mr. Tim Vasquez in the amount of $178,000, $178,382.51 through payments to his band Funky Monkey since 2007. Daily and Wells, a
Can you
Harris
hear me?
system, radio system, a vendor system there. There we are.
I think I'm back.
So
Can you hear
yes,
me?
so yes, we do hear you, Joe Hyde. We're just kind of giving the nuts and bolts of this. Over $178,000 in monies deposited into the bank account of Tim Vasquez, which is why we are here today talking about this particular thing. Nonetheless, do we have Joe back? Do we have Joe back? Okay.
You got me back. I'm sorry about that. The earphones were giving me trouble.
Alrighty. So, Joe, we just mentioned the 43 checks that were deposited in the account of Tim Vasquez in receipt of over $178,000. When he took the stand today, what were some things that were asked of him, and what were some of his responses that you can recollect there?
Well, on the check thing, the prosecution hasn't really enumerated the checks as far as what Daly and Wells has paid him. And of course, they hired his band Funky Monkey to play the Daly Wells functions. And it's over 13 years. So you take $178,000 divided over 13 years, it's only about $13,600 a year if you go from 2007 to 2019. I say only, but that's, so the big argument that the prosecution's making is that they were overpaying them for playing 3 or 4 shows a year. They're overpaying them, to keep Vasquez on this, I guess, bribery payroll to make sure that he takes care of the Daily and Wells and Harris Radio interest in the city of San Angelo. The defense argues that the amount they're paid by Daily and Wells for private parties in San Antonio at exclusive places, like there's a country club up there north of 1604 that they play at a lot, that $5,000 per night is not a big deal, especially for a 9-piece band. We had Travis McClarty, who's a music industry booking agent and also producer. He testified, said the same thing. So these top 40 bands are getting, $10,000, $15,000 for performing because they keep people engaged. He says private parties, you charge full retail. And full retail, he said, from Funky Monkey was about $5,000 per performance. So that's the argument there. Obviously, the prosecution wants everyone to think they're getting overpaid, while the defense is saying no, they're paying full retail. But definitely, the Daly and Wells parties, private parties, were a big income producer for the Funky Monkey band over the years.
Yeah, and as you can see, as we were just showing you some of the images from the courthouse there in Lubbock, as Tim Vasquez exiting the courthouse, the federal courthouse there. And Joe, speaking of some of these checks that we're talking about, check 42 from on December 7th of 2016, vendor 1 wrote a check in the amount of $50,000 to Funky Monkey and noted Timothy R. Vasquez in the memo section of the check. Number 43, on or about December 12th of 2016, Vasquez endorsed the check and deposited the $50,000 into his personal bank account at Texas State Bank in San Angelo, Texas. So we're talking $50,000 for a 9-piece band. I mean, are we going to see a version of Frank Sinatra coming out anytime soon if we're getting $50,000?
Well, the $50,000, according to court testimony, was actually a retainer for Funky Monkey to play up to 10 more performances. And most of those private parties they're doing for Daly and Wells in San Antonio are 2-night engagements. So that's a $10,000 engagement. So it's not just one performance. It's cut out into 10 performances. And of course, the check was written after Vasquez had left the employment of the city of San Angelo. Vasquez lost to Frank Carter in that election for police chief in July of 2016, if you remember. And so that check came out after. So the prosecution's theory on that is that somewhere in, I believe it was December of 2016, Vasquez wrote a texted Nick Hanna and said, "Hey, I heard that there's an investigation going on to me. Oh, come on, man. I've already lost the election. Why are you trying to do this to me?" And Hanna, they had a little short exchange, and it pretty much confirmed, according to the prosecution, it confirmed to Vasquez that he was, in fact, under investigation by the Texas Rangers. Of course, Nick Hanna is our sheriff today, but back then he was a Texas Ranger and he was the lead investigator on this. And anyway, the prosecution's theory is that he let Daily Wales know that he was under investigation, and that $50,000 and the retainer for 10 shows or what have you was kind of shut up money, keep quiet money. And so that's their theory. It's very circumstantial. They don't have any Daily Wales employees or owners or officers. No one from Daily Wales has testified in the trial, which kind of asks a big question: is, if you receive a bribe and that's illegal, isn't giving a bribe illegal? And where are we on prosecuting the person who gave the bribe?
Right. That's a valid question right there. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So what has happened is and I'm going to jump around a lot, but in the pretrial motions, the prosecution got convinced the judge that they could not bring in evidence of who gave the bribe into the courtroom, so they can't even talk about it. Although defense attorney David Gwynn, very smart man, in the closing arguments brought it up, said, if you gave a bribe, if he's going to be charged with bribery, what are you doing about the guy who provided the money, who gave the bribe? So we're going to prosecute the guy who received the bribe, but let the guy who gave the bribe off the hook. He brought that up in the closing arguments, and then the judge shut down the trial for a second. They had this meeting at the judge's bench in secret, and then they started their arguments again. And David Gwynn never, and of course he's the defense attorney for Vasquez, he never mentioned who. He didn't ask the question again or expanded on who gave the bribe.
All of those are very valid things. Certainly, although Mr. Tim Vasquez is on trial for this, facing federal bribery charges there. For those who are joining us now, we are joined by Mr. Joe Hyde, who is live in Lubbock with us. He is following this Tim Vasquez trial there in the federal courthouse there in Lubbock, Texas. The jury is still deliberating. We hope to hear something tomorrow. Joe Hyde says about noon. That perhaps we can see a verdict, perhaps. But at the moment, he's facing 4 counts there, and we looked this up today, and according to data, so this is he's facing, when it comes to in terms of sentencing and how much jail time he could see. Minimum is 2 years, maximum 20 years for this particular thing. And according to data, 84% actually see a minimum sentence. So if we'll see how everything plays out tomorrow there in Lubbock, Texas. In the meantime, Joe, we saw a number of former city council members from the San Angelo City Council testify yesterday, along with our former mayor and city attorney. What can you tell us what they were asked and some of the remarks?
Well, the city council, it was like a reunion of the city council of San Angelo circa 2015. We had, of course, Mayor Dwayne Morrison. We had Liz Grindstaff, Lucy Gonzalez, Johnny Silvas, Rodney Fleming. I'm going to forget Charlotte Farmer. It was like old times up there, and they got up there. The biggest thing out of that was that, to prove that Vasquez was working nefariously, trying to convince or trying to, I guess, lobby for this Daly and Harris radio, Daly and Wells Harris radio system. That they asked, had you known, every one of those people, the former council members, were asked, had you known that Tim Vasquez was being hired by Daly and Wells through his Funky Monkey Band to play their Christmas parties and their private functions, would you have changed your vote as far as voting for this $5.7 million upgrade of the Harris radio system they did back in 2000? I believe it was June of 2015. Would you have voted to do that? And everyone, all of them, except for Dwayne Morrison, said that they probably would have changed their votes. They probably would have said no. And Liz Grindstaff brought up something very interesting. She said, if that was the case and Tim Vasquez had disclosed that he had this business relationship with Daly and Wells, that thing probably wouldn't have made it through city staff. to get on the agenda to be voted on. And I think that's probably true, because I don't know if you watch city council, if you look at each agenda item, they have to go through a vetting process and people have to sign off on it, including legal. The city attorney has to sign off on everything that gets on that city council agenda. So Dwayne Morrison said he was confident that the solution was the right one, and he was confident that the price was the best price that the city could get, because they're buying it through what he called the bid book, which in the trial, there's some confusion on that. They're saying it went through the Houston Galveston government. It's kind of like a co-op, kind of like our own Concho Valley Council of Governments. They have the same thing for Houston and Galveston, and they said in some of the testimony, Roger Banks, who's the former purchasing director for San Angelo, said that they bought it through that buy book. So Morrison said he was confident they were getting the best price. So there's a lot of discussion about how Vasquez may have steered the city council or the city of San Angelo to not put that $5.7 million radio upgrade up for bid. And that was part of the payoff that what he owed Daly and Wells for all of their money they spent on him over the years.
Wow, that is insanely interesting as to how all of that kind of got put together there, Joe. All right, so Joe, we're about less than 10 minutes before our Zoom call ends here. Tell us what can we expect tomorrow? Can we see a verdict come our way tomorrow?
I think you're going to get a verdict. Although I will say that the fact that the jury didn't come back right away within an hour or two with the verdict this afternoon is a good sign for Tim Vasquez. Of course, he's facing 4 counts, so he may not be found guilty on all of them. Now, realize that 3 of those counts is honest mail fraud, and what they did was they charged him with that for every check that the city of San Angelo cut to Daly and Wells, or to whoever the co-op they bought it through, because they mailed those checks through the mail. So that's how they're connecting that. And then the reason why he's up for bribery in a federal court is because the city of San Angelo in 2015, when this $5.7 million radio system was approved, the city of San Angelo in 2015 received more than $10,000 in federal benefits from the federal government. So that makes when you mess with a local municipality that has federal funds in it, that's what makes it a federal offense. As far as what I think tomorrow is going to happen, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think that when people may disagree with me, but I think Vasquez taking the stand on his own behalf today actually helped him. The prosecution was not tough on him at all. In fact, the prosecution, when they were cross-examining Vasquez on the stand, I felt, my own personal opinion, if I'm giving opinion analysis, they got a little bit too bogged down in how many shows were played in 2015 and how much money was paid. And they were trying to correlate that with Facebook posts back from 2015 that Tim said I had nothing to do with. That was my girlfriend, Tammy Merwin, putting those up. So it just got to kind of bog down. But one of the things, when his defense attorney, David Gwynn, was talking to him on the stand, Vasquez actually broke down and cried. He said, had I known that I needed to fill out these forms and do all this stuff that the city never told me I needed to do, I would have done it. I mean, and his overall defense was, I thought everyone knew that I had Funky Monkey, the band, and everyone knew that we were playing these shows in San Antonio for Daly and Wells. I don't think that most people knew or connected the dots back then in 2015 that Daly and Wells was the radio vendor for the city of San Angelo.
Yep. Valid point there. All right, Joe Hyde, our boots on the ground in Lubbock, Texas, talking this Tim Vasquez, former San Angelo chief of police, bribery trial up there in the Panhandle. Joe, thank you so much. We will look. We're going to visit tomorrow. I know, if regardless if we see a verdict on this tomorrow or not. So, hang tight. Thank you so much for being boots on the ground for us.
Well, thank you, Manny, and y'all take care of everything down there while I'm gone.
Alrighty, Joe Hyde, reporter there in Lubbock, Texas. We will bring this is the latest. There has not been a verdict yet. The jury is still in deliberation, so we will wait and see what happens. Come tomorrow, perhaps a verdict. What we're seeing, what we're hearing, maybe perhaps around the noon hour. But regardless, for anything on the latest of this particular case, check out our website www.sanangelolive.com. Joe Hyde will have analysis of this, or just a write up of what has transpired over the last few days. Alrighty, for Mr. Joe Hyde and the San Angelo Live crew, I'm Manny Diaz. Good night. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.